Come on, Livingston. We gotta go on and on and on. Together we can make it. We gotta go on and on and on. Come on, Livingston.
Knocks it through. Mullen bursting into the box. Josh Mullen.
Together we can make it.
Mullen's ball across, it's turned in! It's Pittman who's got it! Livingston leads!
Road is long.
Can they get the ball back in? O'Brien.
Lead! And Livingston have the lead!
Man, can score.
If we march together.
The full-time whistle blows and David Hayes celebrates! And the Livingston fans join in exultation.
Come on, Livingston.
Livingston have the lead against Rangers, and they are certainly rising to a few occasions on their return to the top flight in Scotland.
Come on, Livingston. We gotta go.
Hello and welcome back to Talk Livi, the podcast dedicated to everything Livingston Football Club and Scottish football. My name is Angus and today I'm joined by Euan. Euan, how are you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm very good. It's good to have the league campaign back up and running, the bread and butter, isn't it? But sadly, it didn't quite go to plan in terms of getting a result, but we did come very close and ran Rangers very close indeed. So there's a lot of positives, which we'll obviously discuss. What about yourself, mate?
Yeah, very much the same. There's a lot to be optimistic about, and yeah, I'm sure we're going to dive completely right into that. But as always, you can find this episode as well as all of our others on your preferred podcast streaming site. Just search for Talk Livi, so follow us or subscribe to ensure that you don't miss another episode.
We'll kick the episode off by discussing our Premiership opener against Rangers, as despite a battling performance from the Lions, they would come away empty-handed.
With the Premiership campaign underway, we'll give our predicted tables for the season ahead.
Finally, the Lions are on the road as we look ahead to our visit to Tannadice to take on Dundee United.
It was as tough as it could get on the opening day for Livingston as Rangers visited the Tony Macaroni Arena to kick off the Premiership campaign. Despite an early Joe Nobley strike, quick-fire goals from Arfield and Tavernier sealed 3 points for the visitors. Euan, a tough one to take with the matter of the quick goals, but good performance overall.
Yeah, I thought we played very well. In particular, first half, I thought we were very good. Joel Nobley was borderline unplayable in the first half. He was excellent. And we spoke about it last week in terms of what he would go with, Davey. He kind of went with that 4-3-2-1 almost. And as we mentioned, Shinnie and Pittman being the ones kind of getting closest to Nobley and Kelly being in there for that little bit of height as well. Kankar obviously started the game at left back, but we'll go on to discuss that. But the first real incident of the game was Joel Nobley grabbing his first goal for the club, and it was a pretty sublime finish. It's long ball from Shamal. Nicky Devlin's got the flick on, and Suter's not really covered himself in glory, I would say, but it's an unbelievable finish by Joel. And we've spoke about it before on the podcast, Angus, that Joel needs to add that to his game in terms of goals and maybe a few more assists. So hopefully that gives him a bit of confidence going forward. But that's 9 goals we've scored this season, 9 different goal scorers. So goals are coming from everywhere across the park. It's certainly very good. But I think first half, despite all the possession that Rangers had, I thought we were almost quite comfortable in the game, to be totally honest with you. We defended our box very well. We knew what was going to happen. We knew we were going to sit in deep and make 2 banks and make it very difficult for Rangers, and we were forcing them to go round us rather than playing through us. And they were pretty much restricted to a few pot shots from distance, but arguably we should have got a second. Obalai's got a free header. He's watching it the whole way, and he's put it straight at McLaughlin. If he puts it either side of him, he's in trouble, I think, given it was such a free header, and Nobley's had a shot blocked as well later on in the half. But I do think second half, Rangers, they brought on the boy Tillman, who's on loan from Bayern Munich. I mean, this just sums up the difference in resources, doesn't it? They're bringing on a lone player from Bayern Munich. But I do think he made a difference to the game. They started playing a lot more kind of one touch in between the lines, and they were moving the ball a bit quicker as well, getting their crosses in a little bit quicker as well from Tavernier and Barisic, in particular Kent as well, who again will come on to got an assist. But we did have a chance on the break. Nupley again has ragdolled John Souttar. He's got in behind him and probably has a couple of opportunities to get that shot away. Otherwise, I think it's Shinnie that's making a sprint at the back post who he could roll it into, and we've not taken advantage of that. But there was a few kind of talking points within the game, Angus. The first one's probably the disallowed goal for Rangers with Cholak's header. It's the classic example of why VAR is coming to Scottish football, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In real time, it looks offside, and it's not until you properly slow it completely down that you probably have to give the benefit of the doubt to the striker, who probably is just on. But again, it's one of those completely one of those ones that's basically a blink and you'll miss it in real time. But yeah, it's a perfect advocate as for why the technology is being introduced into the Scottish football, and people moan about it and say anything else, but it would work, and it would cancel out a goal. It would allow a goal to stand like that. Thankfully for us at the time, it wasn't to be. But yeah, I don't think we're gonna have too many complaints about it if it was given, because it was perfectly. Well, it is a very tight decision. It is one of the ones you'd have to be getting the ruler out to justify like the lines. But yeah, straight away you can't tell that is a clear onside goal. I think obviously one of the other ones is that the issue with Philippe Kinkar or Philippe. See, ever since you said that in the news, I can't not get that out of my head now. I'm going to be calling them this forever now. Obviously, booked early on, I think about 25 minutes in, which is always going to be walking the tightrope for a game that had like more than an hour to go in it. Another challenge on Scott Wright led to loads of Rangers players and the manager shouting for him to be sent off, and obviously prompted us to replace him for Christian Montano. Do you believe that he was lucky to stay on the pitch, Euan?
I think the first tackle he makes, he does just clean right out, and it's a yellow card, to be honest. The second one, I don't actually think he's trying to make a challenge. I just think Wright spun him. I don't think he's actually trying to tackle him. I think he's almost just going in to put pressure on him, and Wright spun him a bit quickly. And not every tackle is a yellow card in football, but I have to say, right decision by Davy to take him off. I think Rangers would have just targeted that side for the remainder of the game to try and get that advantage in terms of having a man sent off, going down to 10 men. I think it was the right decision, albeit Phil looked visibly frustrated. I think he threw his shin pads in the dugout, but he's a young lad and he'll want to play and he'll believe that he can go through the game and see it out. But I think management-wise, Davy made the right decision in that case, taking him off early and putting Montano on. So I wouldn't say there's a lot of debate with that. I think it was just a good bit of management from the gaffer.
I think with it as well, you make a good point about not every foul is a yellow card, because an interesting fact that has gone completely under the radar with this is I think only a couple of minutes later, Rangers had a free kick, comes out to the edge of the box, Pittman clears it, and Kamara catches Pittman high and very late. Kamara was already on a booking. If we're going by that logic, is Kamara also sending off? I would, if you're asking me, no, the foul is absolutely not a yellow card. But if we're going to be silly and start acting as if like everything is a yellow card, then yeah, it probably should be. But yeah, you know what? It's always like in these games where every single decision is micromanaged and under the microscope for everything. Rangers really did just turn it on in that second half, though, didn't they? I mean, you mentioned there about moving the ball quicker and that. I thought one player in particular, Ryan Kent, really, really turned it on. I think he gave Nicky a really tough time down our right hand side, their left hand side, and I think we all obviously talk about how Nicky must be one of the quickest players in the league. Ryan Kent has to be probably the quickest player in the league, because how many times he gets a good couple of yards ahead of like players like Devlin and stuff like that is absolutely incredible. Watching him on that left wing every time he got the ball, it was just pure fear. And yeah, and that came to fruition when he put in that sublime cross, and for an even better header from Scott Arfield, who has now scored in each of the last 3 meetings between us, and I think he's probably scored against us before as well. Loves to get one over on us. I think, just talking as like a general point, obviously Rangers fans quite bemoaned the fact that they were keeping Scott Arfield. Ewan, do you think like games like this and moments like this is proving exactly why he's a key player to have in their squad still?
Yeah, I think I turned round to Andy at the game and said when Arfield was coming on, and I went, watch him get the equaliser. He has a habit against us. And sadly for me, I was correct. He went and got that equaliser. But yeah, I mean, if the goal was coming, wasn't it? We were under a lot of pressure. Talk about a couple of chances. Debutant Shamal George pulled off a couple of heroic saves. The one from that miss-hit Barisic cross, which he tipped onto both the crossbar and then onto the post, and then his point blank save he makes from Tillman as well to keep it at 0-0. But yeah, Kent, the goal's sloppy from our point of view, but it's good from a Rangers perspective. I think Kent's allowed too easily to get onto his right foot to put the cross in. I think it's Jason Holt switches off. I think he's tracking Arfield into the box, and Arfield makes that run across the front post and glances the header in. But one of the things you're taught is when you're probably most vulnerable after you've just conceded or when you've just scored in a game, because you can switch off a little bit, and I think that's what's happened. The foul on the edge of the box, soft, I thought. Womionga, I didn't think there was a great deal in it. And Tavernier, as Davey put it, Tav does what Tav does, and he's scored a free kick. We'd given away 2 or 3 round about that area. I think Barisic had one which he put wide, but when Tavernier's lining that up, he's more than likely going to test the goalkeeper. A few question marks with the positioning of the wall and things like that from Shamal George, but all in all, I thought he had a pretty solid debut, looked pretty assured between the sticks. But I mean, after that, you're an uphill task. But also think what's not played into our hands is Davies switched the shape just prior to the first goal as well. He's going to a 5 at the back. Obviously, Rangers were peppering our box with crosses, so putting in another centre-half, can absolutely understand the logic with that. But I think Rangers have almost taken advantage of the fact that we've just changed our shape. They've probably caught us a little bit out of sync with that. But there's another VAR-style incident later in the game. We have a goal chopped off. It would have been an own goal when I always hit the crossbar from a long throw. It took me and my pal about 5 or 6 goes of watching it slowed down to figure out where the foul actually was or what we think the foul was in it. Appears to be a push by Sean Kelly on Connor Goldson, but if VAR's involved, is that goal standing?
Oh, absolutely. And the way that I will describe this, and that nobody can dispute it, former Livingston manager and Rangers hero Kenny Miller was on Sportscene at the weekend, and even he said that the goal should have stood. It's quite a baffling one. It just seems as if Goldson just completely kind of misjudges it, and it is the softest of fouls that's ever given. It's one of the ones you see sometimes that the referee just gives to relieve the pressure if they've given like a poor decision beforehand or that as well. Honestly, looking back at it, it's just like there's no way there's an actual foul there. And yeah, with VAR, that goal definitely stands because there's like no contact to that whatsoever. You look at the free kick that Rangers got. How we can give that. Again, you take these with a pinch of salt, and the technology was going to be coming in. Frustrating nonetheless because of the circumstances. It would have been 2-2. Again, we go back to that offside that probably should have stood as well, and we can't be too disappointed with it. But still at the same time, it's a very basic decision from the referee. I think in this instance, where the offside's a wee bit tighter, where sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. This one, it's just I think it's just poor refereeing in all honesty.
Yeah, as I say, it took me and my pal when we were at the pub on Saturday night after the game a good 4 or 5 watches at it to figure it out, because I was looking at Newbley, but if anything, Newbley, you actually look at it again, Newbley's arm's being held by, I think it might be Tavernier. Tavernier's got Newbley's arm between his body and his arm, almost pinning him, and then it's not until you take away the focus off Newbley and actually look at the other players in the box that you notice the Kelly Goldson incident. But it's incredibly soft. And tell you what, flip that the other way round. If that was the old firm and that goal was disallowed, I wonder what the uproar would be on social media about it. It would be interesting to see. But I think there was a lot of positives to take. I know a few fans have been a bit sketchy about our League Cup group, but I've always preached that those games are very different to how we're going to be playing week in, week out in the league. I think that game yesterday, granted, not all the opposition is going to be of the same quality as Rangers throughout the season, but I think that gives you a better idea of how we're going to set up and probably play most weeks. And there's a lot of positives to take. I think we defended our box very well. Look, I thought Fitzy and Ayo had very good games at the back. And then middle of the park, just classic whole Omiyonga, Pitts running about after everything. And Joel Newbley up top was just, he was unplayable at times. I think the centre halves were taking it in turns to clean him out. It was frightening. They were absolutely crapping themselves every time he got on the ball. And I've seen John Souttar's been in for a lot of criticism in particular on social media and in the press and things like that for his performance. But there's a lot of positives to take from that. And I'm really looking forward to the remainder of the season off the back of it. But sadly, we couldn't get the result to match what was a very good performance all in all.
Yeah, got to agree with you. The performance from the entire team was very encouraging. I think Andrew Shinnie as well, being forced out wide, we talked about that in the preview about, he may put, Pitts and Shinnie as kind of wider players, to track those kind of runs and everything like that. I thought Shinnie was good in, kind of maintaining possession and that, keeping the ball at times. And yeah, of course, Newbley with a very Lyndon Dykes performance against Celtic. John Souttar will not be looking forward to the next time having to play them, as will all of Rangers' defence. And, it's good to know that, in the league this season again, the teams in the league are going to be looking at us and being like, there's always going to be a threat from us because of Newbley. It'll be interesting to see as well how we get on with, reintroducing Bruce Anderson into the squad as well, because he's probably been sacrificed in a way because of, wanting to get extra legs out wide and, put in a bigger physical presence up top. So it'll be interesting to see, how teams are going to cope with, having two attacking threats on like there. As you said, Newbley, absolutely tremendous. I mean, to be on opening day, against one of the most couple of the most experienced defenders in the league, like the Goldson, even like Kamara in midfield and that, John Souttar, he made them look, not above his level in all honesty. I mean, these are players who, were in the Europa League final last season and, he's absolutely ragdolled for a bit. And, on a different day, a couple like that other chance that he has, we could go 2-0 up and, we come away with a shock result. But yeah, as you say, we're not going to be behind the ball like that in every other game. And I think it should give us a whole load of confidence going into the rest of the season, because looking at every other team, we will cause problems, we will cause issues. And, I think in recent seasons, we've caused away from home as well, particularly we've pulled off a couple of shock results and everything like that. I think we could be in for the exact same again. And, it looks as if it could be a very exciting season with, we've got under the belt. We've still got players to come back from injury. Actually, that's the point I would like to bring up to you. And we only made 2 subs in the game against Rangers just there. Obviously, Montano came on early on and then Bruce Anderson came on. Looking at the rest of the team, though, from that starting 11 and then looking at the bench, who necessarily, did you see any changes in there that, you probably would make? Or, because in all honesty, I think that the bench looked a little bit lacking in that way. Obviously, we had Shinnie, Pittman, Holt, Omiyonga and Kelly on. I mean, that's 5 kind of players who are going to be playing centre midfield for us. Didn't really seem to be kind of many options off the bench. You could, go on to replace one of them. Obviously, Shinnie came off for Anderson. You think that's a particular issue with, squad depth? I know I've named 5 players there, but if we're looking to play with a 3 each week, 2 injuries or suspensions, that could put us in a wee bit of ball, or if fitness and that isn't up to date. Do you think we should maybe be looking to bring in a couple extra bodies?
I know Davies in the market for another forward player that can play across the front three. He's kind of said as much in the press recently. But in terms of centre midfield, I don't think we need anything else. We had, in my opinion, 5 centre midfielders playing, and then you had Bitsindu as well. So you've got 6 there who can play in the 3. I don't think Shinnie and Pitts would play in your front 3 every week like they were. I think that was more a tactical thing. You've got Bahambula, Goncalves once he's fit can play up there as well. Josh Mullen's still at the club, and as I say, Davies looking to bring in another option. So I'm not particularly concerned in terms of squad depth. I think James Penrice would have been at left back had it not been for injuries. I believe Jacko's almost making up a number on the bench just now. I think he's been struggling with a couple of niggles here and there. So I'm not overly concerned. I kind of echo what Davies said in that if the transfer window was to shut now, would you be pretty content with what you've got in the building? And I would probably agree. I would like to see what option he's got, what options he's looking at in terms of the forward line, because that's maybe one area I would look at adding something else. But yeah, I'm quite relaxed in terms of what the squad's looking like just now, personally. But yeah, it was unfortunate we didn't get the result we'd all craved, a wee upset on the opening day. But hopefully we can take lots of positives for that going into the game at Tannadice next weekend. With the Premiership campaign underway, we thought we'd give our thoughts on how the league might look at the end of the season. Angus, we'll start with your top four. Who are you going for?
Top four, just like everybody else who's previewed the Scottish Premiership, I have, well, the top two probably mixes up for most people, but I have Aberdeen fourth, Hearts third, Rangers second, and Celtic in first place. I think basically everybody will have a variation of that. Probably the two teams at the top that are switching about.
Yeah, I've got the same four teams, very slightly different order. I think Rangers will win the league this year, personally. The reason being, I think Rangers, and I said this when I was doing, this is Ibrox talking about Rangers, I think they've done this summer what they should have done last summer in terms of building on the squad depth a little bit more. When they should have essentially built on that after winning the league, whilst I think they kind of sat still last summer. And granted, they still had a very good season in the grand scheme of things. But I feel it's like a flip reversal. I don't think Celtic have added a great deal in terms of the squad depth. Granted, they've signed the likes of Carter Vickers and Jota permanently, but they were there last season already, so it's not adding to the squad, if that makes sense. Whilst I think Rangers have added, albeit they've lost a couple of players in the likes of Rebo and Bassey, but I think they've added very well to their squad. So I fancy Rangers to win the league, but I think it's going to be so tight as the season goes on. But I've got Hearts in third again. I think they've added decent quality to their squad. Shankland, if he's given service, is likely to go and score goals for them throughout the season. Our man Alan Forrest got off the mark at the weekend as well for them, who I think will be a astute bit of business. But Aberdeen in fourth. Two things with Aberdeen. Surely to God they can't be as bad as they were last year, finishing 10th, with the resources that they've got. But I know, again, they've sold big in terms of bringing in, £7 or £8 million for the likes of Ramsey, Ferguson, then money coming in from McKenna as well. But they've spent over £1.5 million, which for a Scottish Premiership side outside the old firm to be spending £1.5 million on transfer fees. I mean, they've got to produce this season, because I said this doing another podcast in the week. If they have a slow start to the season, Goodwin's bang under pressure spending the money that he spent. So I think Aberdeen will be thereabouts. But what are you thinking for who's making up the rest of the top six then?
I think genuinely this could, I think Dundee United are put in fifth, and I think that's where this is where I feel like my comfortableness probably ends. I feel like every single other team beyond here could probably move around, maybe apart from the bottom two. Sixth place, I have went with Hibs, and I think that may be a little bit of a surprise, considering how much of a shambles they were in pre-season. I think I was doing the Energy Sport podcast, and I think I said basically that I could see Lee Johnson being one of the first managers sacked by a club. But I think that Hibs, would end up being a team who could end up turning that around, have a decent end. They could recruit in January, bring in a couple of players in that, and, clinch top six. So yeah, I went with Hibs to finish in there. Obviously, they got off to a winning start at the weekend there in controversial fashion. Very controversial fashion, considering, again, talking about referee decisions. How Murray Davidson sent off for that, and then the new Hibs left back doesn't get sent off for the other one. Absolutely criminal. But yeah, You have a similar mind you in Dundee United and Hibs, or are you switching up a bit?
I've got Dundee United in fifth because again I think they've recruited quite well in terms of like Stephen Fletcher, keeping Dylan Levitt permanently. I think Craig Sibbald will be a good signing for them. He started at the weekend just there as well. So I think they've recruited well without losing any players, or certainly any really big name players from there.
Only Seagrist.
Yeah, Seagrist, but again they went and signed another keeper who's an Australian internationalist, so you'd think he's a pretty adequate replacement. So I've got Dundee United in fifth. I think Ross County sixth. I think the two wild card teams this season are Ross County and Hibs, because Hibs, God only knows what's going to happen with Hibs this year. I find, as you mentioned, you could see Johnson getting sacked, or you can see him having a relatively decent season. It's one of those ones. Ross County I've got as a bit of a wild card because their signings are a bit of an unknown quantity in terms, but from what I saw of the highlights against Hearts at Tynecastle, they didn't half cause Hearts a lot of problems, especially in the first half. So I think they'll be an entertaining watch. I think Ross County this season, they were certainly a decent attacking side last year, so I fancy them to have another decent season. But we'll go with 7th to the 9th then, Angus. Who have you got as the best of the rest when it comes to after the split?
I've got us to retain our trophy as best of our trophy. Our moniker is best of the rest in 7th place. I then have Motherwell, who again are an absolute wild card. I mean, sacking your manager the day before the season starts is incredible. Justified, I would say, though. I think Motherwell fans will just be bemoaning the fact that they've waited so long to do this. But again, I think that they should be all right. They're such a stuffy side, and get a new manager, and I think they will be able to get somebody who will make them organised and hard to beat. Just kind of like the Motherwell kind of have been over the last kind of couple of managers. In 9th, I have Ross County as well. My biggest issue with Ross County was just where the goal's going to come from. However, watching the highlights there in the game against Hearts, they were absolutely tremendous in that first half. And the boy, is it Awuru?
Yeah.
That bit of skill and hitting the bar was absolutely tremendous. So perhaps he is going to be, the live wire that Ross County needed to replace like Sir Regan Charles Cook. But before the season started, I wasn't too sure. It was a lot of unknown properties. So yeah, I've put them in 9th place. Perhaps that's a wee bit lazy for myself, but you never know. You never know what all these loan signings are going to be like when they come up from down south. I mean, we have very mixed kind of success with it ourselves. Last season, you look at it, Odin Bailey came up from Birmingham, the lowest of the teams who we loan players from, and was by far head and shoulders the best player. The likes of Caleb Chukwuemeka came up from Villa with glowing reviews and didn't quite live up to the hype, I'll say. So yeah, for Ross County, that was the reason why I have them 9th place.
I'm in agreement with you. I've got us in 7th to retain our top of the bottom half split. But I think there's a large degree of it this season is going to be similar to last year. I think there's not a lot to pick between a lot of the teams in the league. So I think we'll be certainly in the mix to get in the top 6. I've got Hibs in 8th. Then I've got Kilmarnock in 9th. I just feel with Killie, granted I wasn't overly impressed when I did see any of the games last year, but I think they've got a manager that will grind out results for them. He did it at Aberdeen for years and years. I think, 7 years he was at Aberdeen and consistently had them 3rd or 4th in the league, even 2nd on 3 or 4 occasions as well. So I just think McInnes will know how to get results in this league, and we'll have Killie quite comfortably safe. But we're on to the bottom 3. The bottom 3, the interesting one. Who's going to have a squeaky bum time season, finishing 10th, just above those playoffs then? Because I've gone for Motherwell.
I have Kilmarnock, and basically for the reasons you said there, I think McInnes is good enough as a manager to keep them safe. I don't think the squad's necessarily that great, and that may be like their downfall of really pushing on. But I think 10th. I think they would take that, to be fair, their first season back. Being, if they're relatively solid and safe enough from the drop, and a wee bit of a distance between them and my 11th place team.
Yeah, I went Motherwell, but I also did this before they sacked Graham Alexander. To be fair, I think with Alexander, I have a funny feeling he wouldn't have been the manager at the start of this season, had they lost that game to us and missed out on the top 6, I think he would have been shown the door certainly at the end of the season with their slumping form. But I almost think he was given the European games as a courtesy because he did get them there. And obviously the performances in the 2 games was abysmal. And certainly speaking to a lot of Motherwell fans, I think it's not even as much the run of results. It's the run of results combined with the style of football. When you're not getting results and you're playing that brand of football, it is really, really tough to watch. And I think that's what's been Alexander's downfall. Be interesting to see who they appoint going forward. But I had Motherwell, regardless, I think, this season to dip in terms of their league position. My bottom 2, it's between the 2 Saints, and I've got St Mirren to finish 11th, and then I've got St Johnstone in 12th. I think this could be St Johnstone's year, where it just doesn't quite fall for them. They've lost a lot of key players in the summer, like say Henry, McCart, Xander Clark as well. Very important players over the last few years for them, and I don't think they've really replaced these guys, and it's tough to pick between the 2. But yeah, I think St Mirren have been here in this situation before over the years in this league since they've got promoted. They've kind of always been in and about there. They've got that bit of know-how to probably get over the line and avoid certainly automatic relegation. So yeah, that's my bottom 2.
I have them the other way around, and I'm not quite sure why. Whenever you talk about the personnel who's left St Johnstone, that's really, really bleak. I just feel like St Johnstone are just that kind of plucky side who just manage to do whatever they can, to just kind of cross that final hurdle, whether it's in like a good way or a bad way, like in a bad situation as in like last season where they're absolutely dreadful, but they did enough to tip Dundee, and then obviously in the playoffs they were head and shoulders above Inverness, was it?
Yeah, Inverness, yeah.
Obviously doing enough over like the past decade plus, like staying in the league and, having like a very successful run. I think I've just given them the benefit of doubt in that manner, to be fair, and think that, for some reason, they'll find a way to stay up. Goals are going to be extremely hard for them to come by. I mean, they were lowest goal scorers last season, and, they've not really brought anybody else in, to fix that. Stevie May and Chris Kane, I think, are good, hard-working players, but, in terms of quality and, getting these goals that will keep you up, not entirely convinced, but I've gone ahead of them. I've gone with them ahead of St Mirren. Yeah, I think when doing like the preview podcast for the uni publication, I said that every season we usually see St Mirren fans talking up a top 6 finish.
Yeah,
we've not seen that at all. So if they think that they're not good enough for that, and they've kind of always finished in the kind of 8th, 9th, 10th kind of area, or even the playoffs in a couple of the seasons actually as well, does that suggest that they actually are that kind of level down there? I would maybe suggest so. And again, Stephen Robinson as well. I think at the tail end of last season, he came in, and I don't think he necessarily made a great impression on on the club. I don't think they played great football, and again, it's another manager who could be under pressure very quickly if things don't go well, because again, I think Robinson is a person who likes to talk about playing like a very attacking style of play, but you look at who he's brought in from like Motherwell and like the ex-Motherwell players that he has, and the personnel with Curtis Main up front and stuff. I just don't really see where St Mirren are going to cause too many issues, but I can't wait for us to to bite me back and Curtis Main to now score a winner against us. But yeah, I've got St Mirren to finish at the foot of the table.
Yeah, well, it's certainly going to be an interesting campaign. I mean, the podcast I did at the start of the week, Paul McNeil, a pretty well-known St Mirren fan, certainly on social media and stuff like that. I mean, he is one of the most positive people in the world, Paul, and even he was struggling a little bit, which I think said normally he pulls out the Tony Fitzpatrick, top 6 card every season and going for Europe, but even he was struggling a little bit. So it'll be an interesting season for them. When we'd finished recording this as Ibrox during the week, we started talking about the first managers to go, and I said Alexander, closely followed by Robinson. And thoroughly enough, Stephen Robinson's name's been mentioned for a return to Motherwell. So, I mean, this one sacking could eventually get me bang on the money with the first two managers to leave Hobbs. But
I mean, does Alexander count since it was before the season started?
competitive games.
Did Motherwell play a competitive game?
European games are competitive games, mate. They're qualifiers.
Not by the way Motherwell
Not
played
by the
them.
way Motherwell played them, granted. Yep, I agree with that. But they were competitive fixtures, so I class that as being correct. But listeners, get involved, let us know, send us in your predicted table. You can go on the BBC Sport website and do a prediction for the league and let us know your thoughts if you think we're talking absolute garbage or if you think we're bang on the money. But we'll see come the end of the season.
Livi will make the trip to Tannadice on Sunday as we take on Dundee United. Euan, with Dundee United having, a European game midweek, how do you see this one going on?
Yeah, very tough European tie for them as well. And AZ Alkmaar, very big test for Dundee United, but I'm sure it's one they'll hopefully, as we just mentioned, be a bit more competitive than Motherwell were in their Conference League qualifier. But it's going to be a tough game. Obviously, Dundee United had a good season last year, but I don't know what it was with Dundee United. I wasn't overly scared of them. I think if you look at them since coming back up under Mickey Mellon, they weren't a very good watch at all. Very 4-4-2, quite defensive, not great on the eye. I think last year under Tam Courts, I did think they'd improved on the season before. I think they played a little bit more through the thirds, but I still think they lacked that little bit of cutting edge. And I think they had the 8th best attack in the league, looking at stats last year, scoring 37 goals, which is quite remarkable given they finished 4th in the league, having scored less than a goal a game. So it tells you where their strength is, which has been defensively, and they had the joint 4th best defensive record in the division last year. Obviously, Tam Courts moving on, I think that was a bit of surprise for everyone. And where was it he even ended up? Was it Bulgaria or Croatia or something like that? In the end, there was a couple of random destinations for him, which he's obviously moved on. And Dundee United have gone with a very trusted pair of hands in the Scottish leagues and Jack Ross. And I think his business that he's done so far has been pretty astute. Getting Dylan Levitt on a permanent deal, I think, is a very good bit of business. I think he's a very good player. Stephen Fletcher, he's scored goals everywhere he's been. A man that we know very well, Craig Sibbald's obviously joined. He started at the weekend at Rugby Park against Kilmarnock. Glenn Middleton as well is another one who's, if you look at all their signings, I think they're trying to add a little bit more creativity in terms of the final third. And that's them obviously trying to address that probably weakness from previous seasons. Again, looking at the squad, other than losing Segrist, I don't think they've lost a great deal in terms of what you would class as maybe their best sort of 11, maybe 14, 15 players that are regularly playing every week. So I think they've added to their squad without losing a great deal. So that's why I kind of have them to be in and about come the end of the season for the European places again. But it's going to be a very tough game. But I think if someone replied to our stuff over the weekend after the Rangers game, you'd look at this as where our season starts is at Tannadice in terms of the league campaign, because as we discussed last week, Rangers is a free hit, isn't it? Regardless if it's at home or at Ibrox. So, yeah, the game against Dundee United, we have a very good record against them as well. In recent years, we took 7 points off them last season. I think we took 6 out of 9 the season before, and then going back to the Championship where we obviously turned them over in the playoffs. So we've had a very good record at Tannadice as well in recent years. So I'm confident we can go there and give a good account of ourselves, but I do think it's going to be a very tough game regardless.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because like you, I would probably big Dundee United up a little bit. They've done very good business. But again, they do have that. They have been known since they came up for being, kind of more of like a pragmatic team, not too exciting. We've had plenty of joy against them in the last couple of seasons. I think last year as well, we didn't lose to them at all. I think 2 victories, 1 up there, 1 at home, and then a 1-1 draw when we were down to 10 men for the best part of 50 minutes. So yeah, I think there is definitely, we could get at them and, probably definitely get a result, especially with, the signs that we had from from the game just there on Saturday. They do have threats we have to look out for. Stephen Fletcher and Tony Watt up front could cause us problems. Dylan Levitt in the middle of the park. Sibbald, we know exactly what he's about. But, watching the game against, Kilmarnock there, the highlights, I think they were all right without, really peppering the goal against Kelly. And I think we should take a bit of joy from that and, kind of like look at, how they performed in that game. They also had, an absolutely daft sending off from Ian Harkes. The first booking's absolutely stupid and then, goes flying into a challenge like that as well. Don't think there's really many complaints from that one, to be fair. So he'll be missing for the game as well. So, that may, make them quite light in midfield as well. I don't think they've completely replaced Jandel Fuchs, who left in January either. So I think maybe that could possibly be a place that we can exploit. I think you look at that back line as well, they're aging, the likes of Charlie Mulgrew and that there. Will he be fancying, chasing after Joel Newbley in a way that John Suter and Connor Goldson were having to do so? Bruce Anderson as well, also causing problems. But yeah, I think it'll be an interesting game, and I think it'll be interesting to see, where we kind of rank amongst other teams in the league this season, through games like this. I think most people are going to tip Dundee United for the top 6. If we have a good showing here, then, people, maybe the narrative around our team, kind of changes a little bit. I've not seen quite as many people, talking about us for relegation this season. I have seen like the odd couple now and there. But, if we have, a decent start for the season, which, we haven't had in most of the ones since we've came back up, then, maybe that narrative changes and people start thinking of us as, being top 6 contenders. Don't know if I'd like that, to be fair. I prefer the underdog status, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I guess, obviously, completely different test for us against Dundee United. Euan, what kind of lineup do you see starting? Do you see, a bit of a shift from this? Obviously, you're probably expecting a change, in the forward line to have more attacking players, more natural players in those positions, to actually attack rather than, with the back of the thought of being, to defend at the same time.
Yeah, I think the back four will be much of a muchness. I do think maybe Montano might start the game. I don't know what the situation is in terms of Jacko and James Penrice in terms of their fitness. So I reckon he'll go a more natural left back in Montano rather than Kincaid for the game. Centre of midfield, again, it'll be interesting to see what he does there, because he's obviously a big fan of Sean Kelly playing in there, and he adds a little bit of physicality to our midfield. And that's no disrespect to the likes of Pitts, Holt and Omiyonga. Unfortunately, they're all quite small, so that's nothing they can deal with, and that's what Sean Kelly naturally gives you, is that little bit more physicality. In terms of your front three, I think Newbley will start again. I do think Bruce Anderson will start the game, and it'd be interesting to see who he goes with on the other side. Does he stick with Shinnie in terms of that position for a little bit more know-how, being away from home, and kind of try to bed Bahambula in gradually? Who knows? We know what Davey's like. Davey likes a wee tinker now and then with his starting 11. So yeah, it's quite difficult to call the team. We kind of called the team against Rangers more tactically in terms of being a bit more defensive and difficult to break down. I do think we're going to have a little bit more of a go at Dundee United, even though we are away from home. So he might go with a little bit more creative spark in the likes of Bahambula potentially. Who knows? But yeah, it's a difficult one to call. Is there anyone screaming out to you who you would have in the starting 11?
Now, as you mentioned, other than Bruce Anderson, I don't really think there's too many changes to make. I think, this game will be very telling for the plans of the season. If Sean Kelly starts in here, then that'll make it clear as to what's going on for the rest of the season. In saying that, though, I would like to see, it is going to be hard to fit all four in, but I would like to see, Shinnie, Pittman, Omiyonga and Holt get as many games as possible. If that's with 3 of them in the middle and then one of them possibly as like a wider player, because I think Pittman and Shinnie realistically are probably, I know I always usually advocate, wide players to be in the wide positions. I think that they probably offer more still out there right now than likes of Bahambula would, to be fair. Obviously
you've got it in for Big Dylan, don't you?
He's taken over from the famed he who shall not be named since he's got off to a great start at Tynecastle, but I'm not sold yet. And I think a couple of games into the season, it's one of the ones. It's like you look at try to give people game time and that. Can you really afford to do it now? Like just in league games, I don't know. Maybe when the reserve league comes back or whatever like that, the fitness will be properly brought back up, but not completely sold on him just yet. And I think somebody like a Shinnie or a Pittman, just offers so much more. To be fair, actually, Josh Mullen could possibly come in. I don't know if that's another player who's maybe still looking to, to get the right levels of fitness. I think he showed early on in pre-season, in the friendly games that he was, firing, but, has been absent for the most of the Premier Sports Cup games. So who knows what the underlying issue is there, but maybe that's an option that we could maybe explore and have him on the right wing. Maybe you move Newbley onto the left-hand side to cause issues, but that may be an option could explore as well, to be fair.
Yeah, as I say, we talked about the squad depth, but we've just talked about all these options that we've got as well. So I think it kind of answers that question a little bit, to be totally honest. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of options there that we could go with. I mean, if anyone's wanting to listen to us in depth, telling them what our starting 11 going to be, the fact we can't really call it as of yet with some of the new arrivals that have come in, so it's quite difficult. But Angus, let's go predictions then. We came quite close at the weekend. We did have a draw, me and you, at the weekend, and we came ever so bloody close. But what are you expecting for the game at Tannadice?
I'm going to go for another draw. I'm going to swap it up for a score draw, though. I'm going to go for 1-1. I fancy us to get, at least a point here. Yeah, I think, we should have confidence of going up there to be able to get a point. We've got a good run against them. 1-1 for me.
I'm going to be bold. Angus. Coming off the back of a European game, I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say 1-0 Livi. And we're going to get off.
Oblai penalty again.
It depends if he's allowed to. It depends if Sean Kelly's played.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Kelly is the new penalty maestro.
You would love that, to be fair.
I would love that. I love Sean Kelly. He's one of my new favourite players. But no, I'm going to go 1-0 Livi. I'm going to be confident. I think we're going to get off the mark early doors this season and get a lovely 3 points up in Dundee. But here's hoping we do manage to pick up a result, and hopefully we see as many of you up there as possible as well. That's it for this week's episode of Talk Livi. Thanks again to every single one of you for tuning in week out. This month we've had quite a few downloads this month, and we've had some great feedback from our interview with Davy Martindale as well. If you haven't listened to it yet, go give it a listen. It's a great insight into what's happening at the club. But again, thank you so much to everyone that does tune in. If you can, we'd love to continue hearing that feedback as well. You can leave us a review on iTunes or simply message us on Twitter, Facebook or Instagram as well.
As Euan said, we're on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, so search Talk Livi to find us. You'll find all the links to our weekly episodes on there as well. You can also find all our episodes, including this one, on all good podcast streaming sites, including iTunes and Spotify. We're also on YouTube, so don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If none of those options suit you, all you have to do is head to our website, talklivipodcast.libsyn.com, where you'll find every single episode we've done over the last few years.
That's it for this week. Thanks to all our listeners for tuning in, and let's hope for another great week following the Lothian's finest football team.
To the Premier